Hi everybody, this is Sue. I'm here with Facebook Live, our grief help, and as you can see, we're missing Chaplain Bob. He is unavailable today, so I'm going to be here all by myself. Well, I'm not going to say all by myself because I have a camera person. I actually have a real life camera person, and her name is Heidi. And a little later, we're going to hear a little bit from Heidi in regard to the volunteer program. But right now, I just wanted to go, I was talking to Bob 2 weeks ago about what we could possibly talk about last week when we had to cancel, and that was maybe some positive things that we can do when we're grieving. And so I kind of went through, did some thinking, and I have a little bit here to offer, but I just, again, I kind of wanted to talk about the grief process and how that leads up to maybe doing some positive things for self-care. But anyway, the first thing hopefully you can see this because I had to use my daughter's paper, which is glitter paper. It's the only paper we had in the house, so I don't know if there's going to be a glare on it. But the first one is acknowledge the pain, which is something that is sometimes very hard to do. We don't want to acknowledge the pain that we're in because it doesn't feel good. And when you don't feel good, you want to pretend that it's not there. But the first thing that really important part of grieving is to acknowledge the pain of your loss and everything that goes with it, everything that you have to let go of, or maybe even with some losses, it's what we wanted to have with that person that we never did have, and we have to acknowledge that grief as well. So that's one of the first things. And then the second one is with grieving, there's a deep wound, and wounds need attention. So we need to face our feelings openly and honestly and express and release those feelings however long it takes. So and I don't think that, sometimes in our society we feel a little bit of shame about crying or just being sad, and I think that it's really important to acknowledge those feelings. I remember when my dad passed away, I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, my daughters are both developmentally disabled, and at the funeral, at the end of the funeral, when they were taking his casket out of the sanctuary, it was quiet, and I think they were playing Amazing Grace, and everybody was just standing watching the casket be escorted out. And my daughter, Christine, started wailing, just crying very, very loud. And I remember my first thought was, I have to get to her and stop that, And I feel bad that I even, say that now, but that was my first thought. I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's looking at her, So I made my way over to her because I wasn't with her at that moment, and I put my arms around her and I said, Christine, you have to quiet down. And my cousin took me by the arm and she said, Sue, you need to let her show her grief, and it kind of hit home how important it is, no matter what. There comes times in our life when we're, so grief-stricken, and there is no shame in expressing that grief. It's a result of the love that we had for that person. So that's another one. Then grieving takes courage. So the only grief that doesn't end is grief that has not been fully faced. So grief unexpressed can be it can be like a powder keg that's waiting to be ignited. So it's important to express that grief, to find healthy ways to express that grief. And then tears are a release of intense feelings. Again, there's no shame in crying. There's no shame in shedding those tears. for our loved ones. It's it's something that we all do, and it is a release. It's a way to let out that sadness and the frustration. Okay, experiencing grief helps to dissolve it. So again, the grieving process is as much as we don't like it, it's a very important part of letting go and saying goodbye to the person that we loved. And then honor your loved one by the quality of continued living. So after you lose a loved one, I think that again, I think we talked a couple weeks ago about the lessons that we can learn from our loved ones and the grieving process. And heartbreak is educating. It's educating us, and so let pain be your teacher instead of your enemy, because you can learn a lot about yourself during that time, and you can learn a lot about life and how you want to go forward, and how you want that person's impression on your life to affect you going forward. And then healthy grief relies on self-care. So now we're going to start getting into some of the positive things that we can do during the grieving process. And self-care is so important, and it's a very important time that you really need to kind of focus on yourself and how you take care of yourself going forward. I know I mentioned a while back when my brother died, that first week I couldn't even acknowledge the pain. I would not let myself cry. I just went through all the motions that I had to do to get through the planning the funeral, having the funeral and everything. And then I went back to work, and I was a mess. But within a couple weeks, I got very sick, like very, very sick, probably the sickest I've ever been. And had a lot of respiratory issues, got pneumonia and everything. And I've actually never totally bounced back from that. I developed a pretty good case of asthma and stuff. So I really do believe that grieving, takes its toll on the whole body, not just the emotions, but your physical body. And so it is important to take extra special care of yourself during this time. And then self-supports. So some people want to increase activity when they're going through grieving process. They want to keep busy, and other people choose to be more quiet. And it's just a personal choice how you wanna deal with it. But those are things that you might want to think about. Do you feel better being active, or do you feel better just having some quiet time and being by yourself, or maybe a combination of both? Talk to your family and friends. Sometimes we want to talk to our family and friends, and sometimes we want to contemplate more by ourselves. So, grieving is that up and down process, and so, there might be times when you want to be with your family and your friends, and the Bible says to bear each other's burdens, and so I think it's a time when you need your family and friends sometimes, but then sometimes you need to have time just all to yourself to kind of reflect. Journaling. When my brother died, after a few months down the road, I started a journal, and I sometimes wrote in that journal 3 times a day. If I was having a rough day, I would just start writing, and I wrote things that, my anger really came out in that journaling. And I put some pictures in there and just some memories. Sometimes I would just write down a memory that I didn't want to forget. So that journal became very important to me. Now, looking back years later, I don't even want to look at that journal. It's too painful. I've come across it a couple times, and I don't even want to open it. It's like, no, that was a very, very sad time in my life, and I just don't want to go back into that. But at that time, it was very, it was helpful to just express all the feelings that I found difficult to express to other people. Some of the other things that I think can be really helpful, and maybe tap into your creativity, like this time of year, a memorial garden would be a really neat thing. Or some people do a Facebook memorial page for their loved one after they pass away, and so that other people can write on it and send their thoughts and their memories and stuff, and that can be really helpful too. It can be a real source of comfort to the family. Volunteer, that's a huge thing that oftentimes people, after they've lost a loved one, they get involved in volunteering, and that's something that we're going to talk about towards the end, but that is something that you can do. Some people find a pet to be very comforting. I just spoke to a lady on the phone about a week ago, and she was telling me what a comfort her dog was after she lost her husband. Scrapbooking, taking the old pictures, and making a really special memorial book of your loved one. Some people, again, as far as activity, they want to work more, or take on less. That's just another thing that, it's a personal choice. You want to go to work and work, or maybe you need to take a little time off and have a break. Accept my current feelings regardless of the me I was. So right now, you might not be your whole self. You might be a little off. You might be a little preoccupied. You might be a little, just struggling, and that's okay. It's all right, because we need to have time. We need to have time to heal. Again, that wound needs to be taken care of. So you do what you have to take care of that wound. Some people like to travel or get involved in a cause. Again, create a memorial. But if you had a family member pass with cancer, maybe you want to get involved in a cancer walk or something, or there's a lot of different things that you could do to honor your loved one. And then the last one is to draw comfort from your faith. Join a support group or talk to a therapist. Again, there's no shame in finding, in reaching out and finding someone to talk to if you need to. Grieving can be a long process. For some people, it isn't so long, but for other people, it can be quite a long process. And sometimes it's good to have somebody help you through that process. And then drawing on your faith can be a huge comfort. I know it was for me when I've lost my loved ones. So those are the things that I wanted to just kind of share with you. And I also have Heidi here. She's our volunteer coordinator. And because I did want to touch on volunteering, I thought that I would ask Heidi to just say a few words and kind of tell you about our volunteer program here at Blue Water Hospice. But I just want you all to know that, we think of you often, those of you that have had loved ones with us, and we want to be there for you and be a source of, that person cheering you on and telling you, it is going to be okay. You are going to get back to a normal life. It's just going to take time. So with that said, I'm going to let Heidi just share a little bit about the hospice volunteer program. Thank you, Heidi.
I gotta figure out how to move the camera around. All right, you just gotta turn it around, I guess.
There she
Hi,
is.
everybody. I'm Heidi Benner. I'm the volunteer coordinator here at Visiting Nurses in Blue Water Hospice. And like Sue said, part of the bereavement path that you, or journey that you'll be taking, could lead you into volunteering. We have 45 volunteers here, and I would say that probably 75% of them are here because they've had someone that has passed away, whether it be in hospice or maybe passed away at the hospital or at a facility, but they want to give back to their community after maybe someone has helped them. So our volunteer program is available for anyone in our community. But if you have lost a loved one, we do want you to go through the 13 months of bereavement first, prior to becoming a volunteer. But after those 13 months, we would love to have you come. You have to just be 18, and we have the Blue Water Hospice Home that we have volunteers that sit with patients, or we have a greeter's desk. We have patient companions that go out into our community. We also have clerical volunteers. We have volunteers that help with the gardening at the beautiful Blue Water Hospice Home. Also, too, we have fundraisers that we do. Volunteers help with that. There's multiple. We have a kitchen as well, but there is multiple things that a volunteer can do here at Visiting Nurses in Blue Water Hospice. So there is some training that goes with it. We also do some criminal background check, fingerprinting, a few things like that, just because it's very important that we know who our volunteers are before they visit with patients and their families. So if you are interested, feel free to contact me here at Visiting Nurses in Blue Water Hospice. I would be more than happy to sit with you and discuss a little bit more about our volunteer program. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.